My name is Neva Elliott. I'm an artist and writer, and I'm Artlink at Fort Dunrees, 2024 Irish Artist in Residence. I'm originally from Carlow, but I'm based in Dublin, where I live and have my studio. So for this year, for 2024, when I, at the end of last year, asked myself, what does my practice need? I decided that it was what I termed my year of making, that I needed to create kind of a program of activity for myself that was this year of making. And when I looked at what does that mean and what are the key points in it, there was two opportunities that I really, really wanted to get. One was a solo show at PALLAS Studio Projects in Dublin. And the reason I particularly wanted that show was due to the nature of the opportunity, which was about, I suppose, taking a chance in public. So I knew that if I had that show, that I could kind of do whatever I wanted to do, and I could allow this year of making to work its way up to this opportunity, and then whatever it was at that point, it would be. So I didn't have to be prescriptive. And that was the key thing that this year of making was about not being prescriptive. And the other opportunity that I was like, I really want to get was the residence here at Artlink. And the reason for that was, some of it are very obvious reasons of having a residency, which are to have a very focused, delineated time of making. But it wasn't that I wanted a residency anywhere. It was very specific, this opportunity. And in fact, this was the only residency I applied for, because it was like, I want this opportunity. And it was to be here in Donegal, and that felt right in relation to my work, because the work that I make is, I would say, based in my life. And when I say that, it's not just about telling stories about things that have happened. It is that processing and working through things. So for me, Donegal was going to be an important part of that, because it linked into the things I needed to process. My husband's family are from Donegal, so this felt a place that was right to come back to think about him. His wedding suit was made of Donegal tweed, which he was very, very specific about. So I knew that I wanted to work with Donegal tweed. We also, in our kitchen, we had a board where we wrote down all the places we wanted to visit and go, and Glenveigh National Park featured on that. So I knew I wanted to do something with Glenveigh National Park. And there was another aspect to it, in that after Collie had died, my thing that I really wanted to do was to get a camper van and go away with myself and my dog for a year. I just really had an intense feeling of I need to leave, I need to get away. And that was something I didn't do. But coming here allowed me to, I borrowed a camper van. I'm living on site in the camper van while working here. And there was a sense of giving myself back time that I hadn't taken. And that became really, really important to the body work. This notion of reparative time, like, what do I need? So I'm giving myself the time that I didn't give myself when I feel like I probably did need it, that I'm giving myself that time now to process. Working in this studio here, the potting shed, and the interesting thing about the potting shed is actually a potting shed. There's no electricity, there's no light, there's no internet. So it is cut off. And then on the first day of the residency, when I, took my stuff out of the van, and I took out my laptop, and then, you know, there's no electricity, there's no internet, and I kind of shut it and I put it away, and I didn't open it again for those 3 weeks of working here, which was kind of amazing. But it was a mental shift in terms of, I think it's too easy to dip into the same patterns, and it's too easy to walk into the studio and sit down at a desk and open a laptop and answer emails that other people have sent you about what they want. I'm not saying we don't do that. We have to do that, you know, admin as part of our practice. But it shifted me to my work, the making of my work, having primacy, being the most important thing, and being the first thing, and being the only thing when I was here. So it shifted very much into a physical making, and through that I think there was like kind of moving down from my brain into thinking about work in a very cerebral fashion, into like dropping into my body and working in a very intuitive fashion. So that was really important, and it was something I was able to hold on to when I went back to my studio in Dublin, and to continue to make in that fashion that was more trusting of myself, and allowed for work that was, I'd say, kind of more gestural. My husband had lived in China before, years before we were married, and when he was there, he was given a jade necklace by a friend. And traditionally, jade in China is given as a gift of protection and good health and prosperity. And this was something that when I met him, he wore. But it was also in China was where he developed skin cancer. So when I met him, you know, he'd said, you know, this is something that happened years ago, and you know, was done with, and unfortunately came back. But he was wearing this jade necklace, and I realized that I needed somewhere to put my feelings about his illness. So I decided to create beads that were a place that I could, through working with clay, put my feelings about his illness, making these and shoving those feelings into it. So I made a number, on my first 2 visits, I made a number of these beads and fired them and glazed them here, that were then shown in my PALLAS show. On this visit, I currently have some more in the kiln. So that is an ongoing work, in that there will eventually be 59 beads. That will be the same number that it was in the string of beads he was given. But for the PALLAS show, what was shown was the number I had ready at that time. And that was also important because it was about, again, the crux of the work, or the fulcrum of the work, is in the making. So it was like, however many I have made at that time is what I show. It isn't about this finish point of there being 59 being like the goal I needed to get to. So another piece that I worked on here and was shown in PALLAS, and is also ongoing, is a piece called Getting Out of Bed. And it is a king-size blanket that I made with 3 layers of fabric, one of them being red flannel, another being moving blankets, like the grey moving blankets, and another layer being blue Donegal tweed. So that blanket I made here and started to stitch. So with it, it's just this process of continuously stitching, and they're just small stitches, very small stitches. They're in no particular order or pattern. The colours I've used are the colours that are already in the blanket: blue, red and grey. And I do that whenever I need to just have some time to myself. And it is that giving myself time back. It's a very meditative space. Some of the images that were in the exhibition I created at Glenveigh National Park. So I brought the blanket there and I wore the blanket in the landscape. And for me, there was that thing of going to this place that we planned to go together, and he didn't get to go with me, but I was there. So there was a lot bound up in it. And in terms of the fabric, there was obvious connection to the Donegal tweed was connection to his wedding suit. The moving blankets were the connection to my father as an electrician, and the red flannel was, it's a fabric that my mother gives to people when they have aches and pains, and it's connected to Irish folk medicine, and that if you put the red flannel wherever you've got the pain, then it'll ease it. And she's given me pieces of the fabric, so there was a sense of that, of looking after myself. So those are two of the main pieces that came from being here in residency, and continue and will be worked on further, and will be shown again. So that they were the physical things, very physical things that I could say came from the space. But as I said, there was that mental, I actually think it's more bodily. There was that bodily making that got to be exercised and learnt. And that's something that I bring with me that's incredibly important, and fed into other works that were in the PALLAS show that I don't think I would have made if it hadn't been for being able to be here and drop into that space. I do not think I'd be able to have been able to work in the same manner. The solo show I had last year, which was at the Lynn Hall Art Centre in Castlebar in Mayo, was very much the kind of body blow of bereavement, that the aftermath, the shock, the trying to cope with what had just happened, and trying to cope with who I was then, like who I was in the face of this thing happening. And I think that a lot of that work was quite raw, because I was. There was a lot of text with it, because it was, again, this figuring out. And I do use a lot of text in my work, and, you know, alongside something physical will be something textual a lot of the time, but I see them as part of the whole, and that it's not telling a story next to an object. It is creating a synthesis that this becomes. So it's one is speaking to the other, so they're having a conversation that becomes the whole piece. And then this year's show was very much more about the post-bereavement healing process. So it was, again, what the phase that I was in was about that. It was about dealing with my feelings rather than just the initial shock of what had happened. One of the other things that being up here has given me is I love this studio so much that I decided to build a studio in my back garden that was basically the new potting shed. So at the moment, I'm building a space, the equivalent of this, like an 8 by 16 foot shed with a clear roof in my back garden. And that's about giving myself a space that is just for making. My current studio is in my home. It's a room in my home, and that will remain, but that's going to be where the laptop and the admin and the archive and all of that, the books, all of that can live there. And my shed in the garden is going to be the purely making space.